Hi everyone, and welcome back to the channel. This video is going to cover the AWS Solutions Architect Associate Exam. This is actually a lesson from my upcoming Solutions Architect Associate course, and there's lessons taken from that covering the Solutions Architect Associate Exam. Now, this lesson turned out to be a lot longer than I was expecting. It's about 20 minutes or so, but stick with it as I do cover quite a bit of information that's important if you are planning to take the Solutions Architect Associate Exam. We get into all kinds of information about the exam itself, the different topic areas, who it's intended for, costs, getting extra bonus time if you're not sort of a native English speaker, all kinds of information around the exam policies and so forth. Now, definitely stick around to the end of the video as I cover a lot of information around the exam costs, different discounts that you can apply, and different AWS promotions that come out from time to time as well. There's a ton of information packed into the 20 minutes or so, but it really does cover everything you need to know about taking and preparing for the AWS Solutions Architect Associate Exam. So let's start the lesson. Welcome back. In this lesson, we'll be taking a look at the AWS Solutions Architect Associate Exam Guide. Now, you're likely watching this video or lesson within the course here because you want to pass the exam. So it's important we know what the scope of the exam is all about before we start investing our limited study time on it. There are literally hundreds of AWS services today. AWS also has a number of frameworks, best practices, and concepts to understand, along with a ton of resources available. So with the Cloud Solution Architect role and AWS itself being such a massive scope of things, how do we actually go about studying for the Solution Architect Associate Exam so we stay focused on what we need to know to pass? Well, this is where the official AWS Solutions Architect Associate Exam Guide comes into play. This exam guide provides you with all the details you need to know to understand what the exam is all about. Now, all this may seem like basic stuff. Like if someone were to ask me, Mike, I want to, take this exam. What should I study for the Solutions Architect Associate Exam? Now, I could simply say, well, read the AWS exam guide and be done with it. But I think there's, some important things I want to go over with the exam guide that may not be super obvious at first. And these can really help you understand what's in scope for the exam and just as importantly, what's not. So in the next few minutes here, I'll walk through the Solutions Architect Associate Exam Guide and help really build that picture of what the exam is all about, who it's intended for, the costs involved with the exam, and so forth. So let's dive in. Now, if you're watching this lesson on YouTube, the exam guide link will be in the description. And if you're catching this within the training course directly, just click on the interactive pop-up button on the video, and that'll take you straight to the exam guide PDF for you to follow along with. Now, before we actually jump into looking at the exam guide PDF, let's have a quick review of the Solutions Architect Associate certification page. And we'll kind of sort of toggle back and forth between the two based on the info on this page here and the PDF guide itself. So first up on the certification info page here, we have some information on who should take the exam, basically answering the question of who the exam is intended for. AWS is saying here that this is a great certification for anyone starting out with AWS that already has a bit of AWS experience or a strong IT background already. Or maybe you're coming from a background from working with a different cloud provider or maybe even some private cloud platform. But if we take a look at the exam guide itself, we get some more info on this question of who the exam is intended for. So it goes on to say here that the AWS Certified Solution Architect exam is intended for individuals who perform in a solutions architect type of role. Then in the part below here on the target candidate description, it goes on to say that the target candidate should have at least 1 year of hands-on experience designing cloud solutions that use AWS services. Now, these are simple statements here, but I'm going to go off on a bit of a tangent because I think a lot of folks looking to attempt these AWS exams actually overlook a lot of this stuff. This info is really important to frame what we should be studying, at what depth, and ultimately, what is the end goal that AWS is trying to achieve by having people certified on their cloud platform? What are the outcomes of new knowledge and skills we can expect to achieve ourselves by studying and passing the exam? Now, for a bit of background, AWS updates their exams occasionally to keep them current with changing trends, new design patterns, new best practices, and new frameworks. They're listening to customers and gaining insights at what skills a person should have to be effective in a given role, like a solutions architect. And I see these exams as AWS providing a way for people to validate their experience and skills in a given job role. Now, getting back to the exam blueprint here, We see this concept in the wording of the certification page. In the What You'll Learn section, we'll see from AWS's perspective by studying for this exam what core knowledge and skills that you can expect to attain in the process. Now, I'll let you read through all this later, but if we hop back up to the exam guide again here, we have similar details outlining what the exam intends to test and validate on. So the exam validates a candidate's ability to use AWS technologies to design solutions based on the AWS well-architected framework. So it should be obvious here that this well-architected framework is a very important piece to understand. Now, the course here has a bunch of lessons going over this framework and all the design principles and best practices, so you'll be very well prepared for all this. And then it goes on to say here that the exam also validates a candidate's ability to complete the following tasks. We have design solutions that incorporate AWS services to meet current business requirements and future projected needs. Design architectures that are secure, resilient, high-performing, and cost-optimized. And review existing solutions and determine improvements. Now, all these things are quite broad statements. If we take just that second one there to design architectures that are secure, resilient, high-performing, and cost-optimized, there's typically, tens to even hundreds of layers to a statement like that. Knowing all the design principles and best practices, and knowing the AWS services well enough to choose the right one for the job, how to combine them in different ways to solve a particular business problem, understanding all the performance aspects of networking, storage, optimal application design, and all the even disaster recovery scenarios, how to monitor applications and services and design them in the most cost-effective way, and even understanding the trade-offs you might have from the cost perspective and performance as well. And all of this is just the tip of the iceberg. So the Solutions Architect Associate exam really tests across a very broad spectrum of things. Now, since the scope of the exam is so broad, this is why AWS typically recommends about 1 year of experience with AWS for candidates looking to take the exam. Now, is it possible to pass the Solutions Architect Associate exam with no prior AWS experience? Well, of course it's possible, but if you're very new to cloud technology concepts and the AWS platform itself, just be prepared for a big study effort to ramp up on a lot of IT and cloud fundamentals and AWS-specific technology topics and concepts as well. Now, if you're starting out from scratch or completely new to the IT field, I'd highly recommend going through the foundational level AWS Certified Cloud Practitioner Certification exam. I have a video covering the importance of the Cloud Practitioner certification that I'd recommend checking out, especially if you're new to cloud and AWS. All the foundational level knowledge and skills are just assumed within the Solutions Architect Associate exam scope. So having a solid base to build on will make learning new concepts and AWS services that much easier if you have kind of that strong foundation in place. All right, so let's finally get into the exam content outline here. So the Solutions Architect Associate exam is broken up into 4 domains: design secure architectures, design resilient architectures, design high-performing architectures, and design cost-optimized architectures. Each one of the domains has a different weighting. So while they're all important areas of focus, we can see security aspects being tested on here have a higher weighting than others, representing 30% of the exam. So you want to be sure as you study for the exam, you pay close attention to any security-related information you come across, as you'll likely see more of these types of questions on the exam compared to cost optimization areas. The exam guide then goes on to break down each of the 4 domains. Now, I won't read through each one in the lesson here, but I strongly advise you to take some time to read through all this a couple times. Don't forget that this really lays out the majority of what you'll be tested on in the exam, so you want to be sure you have a really good handle on what's in scope, and again, just as importantly, what isn't in scope, so you can best focus your study time. Now, I'm going to quickly walk through domain 1 here just as a reference, and then you can continue on from there after the lesson. So within each domain, there's of course this core domain focus area like design secure architectures. Then within the domain, these are broken down into task statements. Now, these are tasks or sort of, likely job functions within the solutions architect position the exam will validate you on. Each of the tasks outline core areas of knowledge and skills you'll need to be successful in completing the task and ultimately addressing the exam questions that'll be thrown at you for this exam task area. So again, go through each domain and all the task statements and get a really good sense of what you'll be tested on here. Now, at the end of the exam guide is the appendix section, which is also very important to keep referring back to throughout your study to ensure you're not missing anything. The appendix section gets more into the overall scope of service categories and AWS services that may appear in the exam and those that are out of scope. Now, the guide points out that this isn't an exhaustive list, and there may be some other services that'll pop up in the questions that aren't on here. The important part in the appendix, in my opinion, is the exclusion list. This is calling out AWS services that we won't expect to see any questions on with this exam. The services in this list are typically covered in other AWS certification scopes like the Developer Associate or some of the other specialty exams. Okay, so we have an idea now of who the exam is intended for and where we can expect the exam to validate our AWS knowledge and skills on. But let's jump out of the weeds here a bit and take a look at what the exam costs, what our options are for taking the exam, and understand the exam format itself. So the AWS Solutions Architect exam costs $150 US. Now the exam is available in a few different currencies depending on where you live, but to keep things simple here for the lesson, I'll just refer to the US dollar pricing. Now, there are AWS certification promotions that come up from time to time that offer slight discounts on the exam fees, but for the most part, you should expect to pay $150 US for taking the exam. Now, if you've watched my video on why I recommend people starting out with the AWS certifications should take the Cloud Practitioner exam first, you'll know about the certification discount benefits you get when you pass the CCP, offering a 50% discount on a future certification exam. So if you've already taken the CCP or some other AWS certification already, be sure to check into your AWS training and certification account profile for the discount code to use so you can take the exam at half the price. Other AWS exam promotions I've seen are free retakes. So if you attempt the exam and fail, you can retake the exam at no additional cost. If a promotion like this is available at the time you're looking to book your exam, it's certainly a great benefit. There's no better practice exam than taking the real thing. So if you have the ability to retake the exam without paying again through a promotion like that, I would suggest just taking the real exam rather than spending a lot of time and additional money on practice exams, since you can take the real thing for free essentially, knowing you can just retake it at no extra cost. You'll get to experience the AWS exam firsthand, get used to the actual questions on the exam, and quickly learn if you have areas to brush up on. And hey, you might even pass the exam the first time around, so it's certainly worth giving it a shot. Now, the Solutions Architect Associate exam consists of 65 multiple choice or multiple response type questions. The exam has a time limit of 130 minutes. So time management throughout the exam becomes a very important factor as well. Knowing that we have 65 questions and 130 minutes to answer them in, you want to try to budget no more than about 2 minutes per question in order to complete the exam in time. Ideally, you want to go a bit faster than that so that you can have extra time at the end for review. On the AWS exams, you can mark questions for review later. So if you're stuck on something, it's usually best to quickly pick a best guess answer for that question so you don't leave it blank, but then mark it for review. And then when you're done the exam, you'll get a chance to review all the questions you've marked for review and skip back to those if you have any remaining time left over, so you can reread them and change your answer if needed. Now, I'll have a whole exam strategy lesson at the end of the course here with a bunch of exam day tips, but I'll mention here as well that if you don't answer all the exam questions before the time limit is up, those answers count as incorrect answers. So again, I suggest that if you're unsure of an answer, don't waste your time on it. Quickly review it, pick a best guess, and mark it for review later. That way, if you still run out of time in the exam, you at least have an answer for that question up to that point, rather than getting it, an incorrect score for leaving the question unanswered. Now, getting into the question types to expect on the exam, there'll either be multiple choice or multiple selection types of questions. So basically, it's a pick a single correct answer, or some will be a pick two or pick three type of thing. From my experience, the multiple selection type of questions will let you know how many to pick. So it'll say choose two or choose three as an example. Now, to provide us with a better sense of what the exam questions will look like, AWS provides us with some sample questions we can download. Back on the certification info page, we'll see this download sample questions link, which will give us a PDF of some example questions. Now, I'll let you read through all these on your own, but I do want to point out a few things here. First, we get a sense of the length of the questions and answers you can expect on the exam. If you're coming from the Cloud Practitioner exam or doing the Solutions Architect Associate as your first AWS exam, the questions here are a lot longer and complex, along with lengthy answer options as well. We need to keep in mind that you want to budget at most about 2 minutes per question to read through the question itself and all the answer options, and then think about the correct answer. This oftentimes means rereading the question and answers again a few times to really understand it. So again, I just want to drill into your mind the importance of time management with the AWS exams, given the length and complexity of the questions. Now, given all the reading involved, since the questions here and the answers themselves are so long, what if English isn't your primary language? The reading and comprehending the AWS exam questions could put you at a large disadvantage from a time perspective. Now, if English isn't your primary language, I'd strongly suggest to look at other languages the exam is offered in. We can see all these language options available on the exam info page here. You'll also want to look into the exam proctor info like Pearson VUE for further information on proctor-supported languages. Now, if the exam isn't available in your primary language, you can take the exam in English, but then put in a non-native English speaker accommodation request through your AWS training and certification account, picking the ESL plus 30 minutes option. Now, once this is approved and added to your AWS training and certification account, once you schedule your future AWS exams, you'll have an extra 30 minutes added to the AWS exam time limit. So you'd have, in this case, for this exam, you'd have 160 minutes to finish the particular exam compared to the default 130 minutes. Now, before we wrap things up here, let's talk about how the exam is scored and what a pass actually means. The AWS exams are a pass or fail type of exam. Now, the results of the exam are between a scale of 100 to 1,000. The exam guide tells us we need a minimum score of 720 to pass the exam. Now, I don't know exactly how the scoring works along with all the weighting aspects of the different domains, but assuming if you didn't answer a single question on the exam, 100 is your minimum score you'd get. Then we'd have essentially a score out of 900. Now, if 100 is the minimum and 1,000 is the perfect score, that leaves us a range of 900 we'd actually get scored on. Now, if you take this 720 score, we need to pass the exam and divide that by 900. It shows us we need basically an 80% or so to pass the exam. So why does AWS have this somewhat complicated scoring approach? Why don't we just have a scale of 0 to 100 or 0 to 1,000 and say, hey, you need a minimum of 80% to pass? Well, let me show you this after testing info page. It has some great stuff to be aware of. So staying on this topic here, we'll jump to this establishing passing score section. Now, I won't read through all this, but it gets into the details of why the scoring process is somewhat complicated. There's different weighting for easy and difficult questions and various factors going on into the overall scoring so that, in general, everyone's exam experience from the pool of exam questions they receive have similar overall difficulty, and it's ultimately a fair and consistent experience for the exam candidates. Now, the top section here is worth reading through as well to give you an idea of what happens after you write the exam. I often get questions from people that do the exam of, when do I actually get my official results? So this section here will explain all that info for you. Now, really quickly here, in my experience, you typically get that pass or fail result immediately when you finish writing that exam. The official results, however, can take up to 5 business days to get after you finish the exam. Now, once you get these official results, you'll have all the info about your exam, a scoring report, and the certificates and any badges and so forth. Now, what actually happens if you fail the exam? Well, first, you've learned a lot by going through the exam itself. The important thing here is that you don't give up at this point. You're so close to getting that certification from all the exam prep and having the even failed exam experience at this point. So I'd recommend booking your retake as soon as you can. You can schedule your retake 14 days after your last exam attempt. Now, what I suggest is once you get your official exam results from that failed attempt, review the scoring information and see if there's any domains where there's a low score in them and focus a bit of extra time on that section. Then along with brushing up on other areas, especially now that you have a better sense of the type of questions you can expect to see on the exam. Now, if you take the exam and you fail again, you can repeat the process and schedule another retake. There's no limit on the number of retakes. The only downside is that you need to pay the full exam fee again for each retake. Now, once you pass the certification exam, there's a few additional timelines to be aware of. First, AWS certifications expire after 3 years. You'll need to recertify within that 3-year period to keep your certification status current. Now, if you take a professional level exam, so like the AWS Solutions Architect Professional Certification, and pass that down the road, this automatically renews the related Solutions Architect Associate certification as well. So going forward, you'd only need to renew the professional level certification, and that'll keep your related associate one current as well. And one last resource I'll mention is the certification information and policy info landing page. Again, you'll have some lessons on booking the exam and exam day tips and what to expect. But if you want to dive into some aspects now, you can check out these sections here to help you get as prepared as possible for the exam so there's no surprises. On exam day, your brain will be packed with all kinds of technical information, and you may have some anxiety going into the exam as well. So ensuring you're well prepared for the exam experience and not have any last-minute issues pop up from the exam proctoring aspects or other policy-related areas can ensure you're focused purely on passing the exam itself. Now, that about wraps up the overview of the AWS Solutions Architect Associate Exam. We've covered a lot of stuff here, but again, knowing as much as we can about the exam up front really helps ensure it's the right exam for you to be taking in the first place, what you'll be tested on, what you won't. So you can focus your study time and get a sense of what the exam costs are, what the questions will look like, and all the policy and admin stuff around scheduling the exam. All right, so let's keep going and get you prepared to pass the exam. See you in the next lessons. Well, thanks for sticking around to the end of the video here. I hope all that information has been helpful to help you prepare for taking the Solutions Architect Associate exam. Now, again, that video was a lesson from my upcoming Solutions Architect Associate course. At the time of recording here, it's just a early work in progress. So it'll be quite a few weeks or maybe months before I finish it. But if you want more information, you can visit cloudvikings.io and sign up for our newsletter to stay up to date on new courses and other information. So again, thanks for watching and see you in the next one.